Hey guys, it's Friday and we're flying casual today. I'm James Rosile, joined with Joshua Lucas from the Den of Nerds. Josh, thanks for coming on the show.
Of course, always happy to talk Star Wars with you,
we're
my
talking Star
friend.
Wars. I want to say thank you. You sent this porg my way, all the way from the United States of America. Look at that. It says porg right on it.
Yep.
Just in case you didn't know. This came in my mail the other day. It is amazing. I'm going to hang it up in my bedroom, and my wife will love every second of it.
Yeah, it's awesome. I'm glad you finally got it, dude. Because Milo was tweeting about the stuff that I sent him because I was so late for him. I was like, okay, well, we'll get him a mommy porg and a baby porg, right? And so I sent him all that stuff, and he got it and tweeted me a while. And I'm like, where's James's package? I sent it out the same day. You know what I mean? By the way, not cheap to ship things to Canada.
I noticed.
Do yourself a favor, guys. Don't make friends with people in Canada. I mean, I'm stuck now because me and James are homies, but I'm just saying like that. It's not a cheap friendship. But talk about the phone call thing. I mean, that's
yeah. People don't know we called each other after Last Jedi, and it cost me. It was like $10 a minute. It was like 1990 long distance charges.
I still think I got the better end of the deal with the shipping and the
I think your shipping was half the cost of my 10-minute phone call with you. Definitely. But today we're going to talk about a bunch of things in Star Wars land. Look, the announcements have been great. Yesterday we did episode 80 of the Rebel Scum podcast, which many people like to give the thumbs down because we said Disney saved Star Wars. Really, what was meant by that, however, was that they saved it for the people that really, really hated The Last Jedi. They got in the Game of Thrones guys to come in and create Star Wars, and somebody said, wow, they didn't create Game of Thrones, they adapted it. Exactly, and that's what they're doing here. They are adapting Star Wars. I've seen your thoughts on this, but what is your thoughts of the Game of Thrones guys coming in and doing Star Wars? A series of films, not just
two thumbs way up. Now, okay, so shameless plug here. I've done 2 videos about this. The one that I just released this morning seems to be doing pretty well. But I basically, the first thing I talked about, immediately my brain went to the Old Republic. And so I did a video talking about how these guys are perfect to do something in the Old Republic era. And I think that's real quick. That's something that Star Wars fans like. Whenever you say like something Old Republic, everybody goes like Revan, right? Everyone's like, oh, the Revan story. That's not what we're talking about. Something in that time period, a new story set in that time period. So I think they're perfect for that. But just in general, like these guys are so good at what they do. I was watching an interview of them from way back in the day when they didn't have all the expensive haircuts that they have now, but from way back in the day, and you realize that these guys are mostly writers, and this whole thing for them was really, really crazy. There were moments when they were on set, somewhere across the pond. I'm not sure where it was somewhere where they were shooting the first season. And just like George in 77, things were going badly. It could have all ended. Nobody knew for sure if it was going to be a success or not. And, I just admire their spirit and their talent. I mean, these guys are incredibly talented. So I'm very excited. But to your point, yes, this is the PR shift that we needed. This is like the Solo trailer, which you and I both really, really like. And then you announce Game of Thrones guys coming in. I think it's the perfect 1-2 punch for the PR, and man, I'm really excited.
Yeah, I was caught off guard by it. I was writing like a story or something for another video, and this update just happened to come up on YouTube, and it was breaking news from the Star Wars show, and I was like, what? So I immediately did a video, no real thinking involved, just like, oh my god, it's a Raw Thoughts.
It's actually funny. Your notification popped up on my phone, which is how I found out about it. And then you messaged me, and I was like, James is keeping all the good scoops for himself. But
but nobody saw my scoop because it was hidden. Because there were people that subscribed that said, I never saw your story. So, it was just one of the things.
Same thing happened with me. Yep, it got buried.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. What are you going to do? Mm-hmm. But it was awesome, though, because I watched the first season of Game of Thrones. I have not followed through. I know, but everybody loves Game of Thrones. I know you are a huge Game of Thrones fan. Your channel deals with Game of Thrones quite a bit, the Den of Nerds, for the 3 people that don't know. But when I heard this back in June, I don't know if you remember, me, you, and Brock, we did a flying casual when Lord and Miller were kicked to the curb, when they were fired from Han Solo. And we brought up the point, the Star Wars universe, the Star Wars group at Lucasfilm is the same as the Marvel group with Marvel, the MCU, where it is treated more like a television series than a film series, in which it's directors for hire in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. And yeah, you got the Russo brothers and whatnot, and they kind of come in and put their own spin on their own take on things. But they have to keep in line with Feige, and here they have to keep in line with Kathleen Kennedy to a point. Now, we don't know the details, obviously, of these guys coming in. But I think that this is a perfect fit for them because they come from the TV side of things. They understand how that works. And now they are going to be the George Lucas to a whole new saga. And that really, really excites me because that's what everyone's been complaining about, right? There's no Kevin Feige. And Kathleen Kennedy, like her or not, she's not Feige. She is the head of Lucasfilm, which is a whole lot of everything. So you bring these guys in, and now they can oversee. Obviously, they have to go through Kathleen Kennedy, but don't forget, Kathleen Kennedy has to go through Bob Iger also. So there's still that totem pole. But now you have one head where they're going to say, "This is our new saga. Let's go for it."
Yeah, it's very interesting. So we know so little about it, but I think that it's one of those examples of like very PR forward decision making. There was a weird backlash to it actually, which is interesting. I kind of go into that in one of my new videos, but overall, I think that the far majority. Here's the thing you're talking about. You're talking about two properties with Game of Thrones and Star Wars that are just so amazingly popular. Like so. It would be very hard to have some of the goodness, the things that people love about Game of Thrones, not sort of rub off on Star Wars with Dan and Dave being involved. Now, for people like you and I, we've sort of been following this as it develops for a long time. I mean, a lot of the actors from Game of Thrones go over to what's going on with Lucasfilm and Star Wars. There's a lot of carryover in their crew. A lot of people that work on Game of Thrones end up working with Star Wars. I think it's because they shoot a lot overseas. So they have like this sort of family thing happening. I mean, we've got the Mother of Dragons appearing in the Han Solo movie. So I think that there was always that thing there, and this really solidifies it. But to speak to the Kevin Feige thing, it's interesting because I think that is something that's kind of understated in all of this news. They're developing, right? So it's the same thing with Ryan. It's the same thing with Ryan, like that Ryan's developing. And actually, I'm really curious. I want to hear what you think about maybe them dropping Ryan's trilogy, because this sort of gives me a hint that like, this is, if I was making the calls, I would, and I love Ryan and I love The Last Jedi, I would drop it and I would focus on this. But the idea here is that you have true visionaries. When they say a series of films, they didn't say trilogy, right? And so that's very interesting. There's some speculation out there on like, well, are these going to be like a one-a-year type films that drop on the streaming service? That could be very, very interesting. But overall, what you have is two guys that are true leaders in the sense of being able to work with enormous cast and crew, enormous. What Game of Thrones does, especially in the last couple seasons, is way bigger than what most Hollywood productions handle. And these guys do everything from adapting, handling the writers, handling the directors, the cast, making it all feel, like one cohesive thing. And so they have the talent together to do something on the level of Kevin Feige for their own series. Now, we're going to get into the Obi Wan stuff in a little bit here, because it really does feel like, at least my thoughts on this whole thing were, I didn't think Marvel, or rather Lucasfilm, was going to do the Marvel thing. I didn't think they were going to do a shared universe. Instead, I thought they were going to sort of build a canon, rely on the canon, and then sort of give films that drop you into different places, sagas being one of them. So it will be interesting to see if this is successful, and these guys, Dan and Dave, can sort of build something that has longevity, that feels like this cohesive string of stories that people are very into. The sky's sort of the limit if it's a success. So those are kind of my thoughts.
Exactly. I'm with you on that one. I thought that's how they're going to operate with canon as well. And I think the way they're trying to handle it, like the MCU, is kind of where they've suffered a little bit in all of this. Like the canon novels do not. I'm going to talk with Brock about this in a couple of weeks. They're kind of a joke, and a lot of, like, not a joke. They're great. Some of the stories are actually great, but the payoff is nothing. Like, where is Nora Wexley
Yeah.
in The Force Awakens. You know what I mean? That's
Yep.
like, you give me Snap, but that's what, and his name's Snap. It's almost like they just kind of forced him to be a Wexley at the end of the day. And that's what I feel on that. Now, you want to talk a little bit about the Rian Johnson trilogy?
Yeah, let's get into it.
All right, before we get into Obi Wan, let's get into the Rian Johnson trilogy being dropped. I'm going to say no. I'm going to say they're going to keep it going because we don't know anything about the Game of Thrones saga. Yeah, like it's the Game of Thrones Star Wars saga. That's it's all sex and nudity. That's what Star Wars.
Can't wait.
Yeah, seriously, that would never happen. But well,
hey, never shouldn't say
never. But nudity, I think, is a far stretch for Star Wars. But here's the thing: even if they do a series of films, if it's on the streaming service, fine. But let's table that one for now. Let's say this is for theatrical. They're going to do them, but I like if they are the Feige of it all, then yes, you could do one a year. But they're not starting this until Game of Thrones is complete, which is next year.
Yeah, and we should mention that means starting to develop.
Yes.
So it will be literally after Ryan's probably first film before they're even close.
Yeah, so that's what I was thinking. So what my thought process is Rian Johnson's trilogy is what gets you to that point. And then maybe the last trilogy, or even maybe the second one, if things go really quickly, if they move fast, it could happen. I doubt it. But then you go Game of Thrones, Johnson, Game of Thrones, Johnson, or Game of Thrones, Johnson, Game of Thrones, like that. And then you just continue with their story moving on. So I don't think they're going to nix Rian Johnson's trilogy. I mean, they just announced it. But the thing I brought up to you right before we started taping is, does this seem a little bit like the DCEU to you, where they're just announcing whatever they feel like?
Yeah, but it's okay. So it definitely doesn't. Like, just to address the DC thing, it certainly does not, because other than, I mean, look, the Obi Wan thing, which I promise, guys, we'll get to the Obi Wan thing. The Obi Wan thing and the Boba Fett scenario are, to me, just feel different than what the DC universe has been doing, because the difference is DC has announced like a dozen films that we have no idea about. You know what I mean? They just keep throwing stuff at the wall and making announcements. There have only been 2 films, and one hasn't even been officially announced. So there's only really been one film that Disney came out and announced that we don't think is actually happening anymore, and it could still happen. That's the Boba Fett movie. So I think it's a totally different thing. I will say this, and did you catch the thing about Bob Iger talking about the multiple television series? Yeah. So another shameless plug. On Sundays now, I'm doing a show called Nerds Talk Star Wars. James is going to be on the very first episode of Nerds Talk Star Wars. We might be wearing the same clothes. I don't know. Figure it out. But point being, we're going to talk about the subject in the first episode is, are we getting too much Star Wars? Does Disney need to slow down? So we'll dig into this a little bit more on the show. But it doesn't feel like the DCEU to me. However, announcing the trilogy and then announcing a series of films it makes you think like the next 5 or 6 years are going to be pretty stacked with Star Wars films. So part of me does hope. I mean, I would really like what they do with Game of Thrones with the budget they're given is ridiculous. So digital effects are getting cheaper and stuff like that. But I mean, what's the budget? I think it's like $100 million. It's like $100 million a season, and they stretch it. I mean, they stretched 7 episodes last season, or was it 8? How many episodes was last season?
I don't watch the show, Josh.
Yeah, I don't. Honestly, I can't remember. It might have even been 10, but I feel like it was light.
I'll Google it for you. How's that?
That'd be awesome. So
what season was that? 7?
Yeah. Yes. So basically, the point is, they do a lot with like about a $10 million budget per episode, right? So think about this. If they give these guys 65, 85 million per movie, and they tell them to do something similar to what they've done with Thrones, and you shoot them in sequence and you have them dropping on the streaming service, like literally one a year, I just really think that's just a great model. And I think if they do that, it won't crowd the box office as much. And you could still have Ryan's trilogy be like the theater experience, the multi-million-dollar, like the $200 million, $300 million budgeted films that are spectacle, and yet have a different sort of flavor going on the streaming service. Now, there's nothing that says they can't like put both of those types of movies into the theater, but it's feeling a bit crowded. You know what I mean? It's feeling a bit crowded. I mean, I think for people like you and me, we're like, hell yeah, you know what I mean? Like either way, it's gonna be hard for us to be disappointed.
Yeah.
But it is kind of interesting, man. It's yeah.
We're gonna have that talk on Sunday on Den of Nerds, and Brock and I are gonna have that talk in a couple of weeks. A little portion of it we're gonna talk about a little bit in a couple of weeks. The overcrowdedness, the oversaturated market of Star Wars. I like the idea of these guys going to the streaming service, but I don't know. The announcement just really made it seem like this was theatrical. When you heard the announcement, it seemed very theatrical, and the multiple series was separate from this. Yeah. And I think Bob Iger said a few years ago, you know, we're going to do a movie a year for the foreseeable future. And it seemed almost like the next 30 years or something like that. I think Kathleen Kennedy or Bob Iger said they were going to do a movie a year for at least the next 30 years was their game plan. Obviously, you know, if one falls short, they'll slow down on that. And if that's the case, then you get Rian Johnson's trilogy, and then you have this new saga series of films, which could, you know, hopefully when they start developing it, they have a beginning, middle, and end. And then you could do like a TV show and put in your filler in between, so it could go on for 20 episodes, if you want to call it, or chapters. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You know, that's my hope on that. Okay, you want to talk about Obi Wan Kenobi?
Yeah, man.
All right, well, we'll do that next time. No, so Obi Wan Kenobi. Look, this film was kind of, sort of, not really, but almost announced like 7 months ago or something like that, or maybe a year ago now. But it's never actually been officially announced. Right? Yeah, like there was the Billy Elliot director was supposedly attached to it, and you know they might not get Ewan McGregor, they might get Ewan McGregor. Ewan McGregor comes out, he's like, I don't know, I'll do it. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, what else is he going to say, right? Even if he knows he's doing it, he can't say anything right now. Do you think with this new announcement, with the Rian Johnson announcement, that this poses a problem for the Obi-Wan film to get its feet off the ground?
So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it does anything to damage the Han Solo film, or rather the Obi-Wan film. It's interesting, though, because you would think, like, where are they going to squeeze it, right? So if Ryan's first movie is ready for the year after Episode 9, maybe you squeeze it in there. Maybe that's the perfect year to put the Obi-Wan film. Is like right after Episode 9. I don't know, man. I badly want the Obi-Wan film. I want it way more than I want the Han Solo film. And I mean, when you look at that Han Solo film, especially now that we know what it's going to look like, it looks awesome. Like, I'm so excited now to get in this movie and just have a good time, a good adventure. So if they could do something similar with Obi-Wan, I mean, it solves some of their problems, man. You know, you want more lightsaber-y stuff. You want more Jedi stuff. I mean, there's a very interesting story you could tell there. You know, he's on Tatooine. I mean, we already know from Rebels that, like, Darth Maul shows up and he puts down Darth Maul on Tatooine while protecting young Luke. There's maybe even room for, like, earlier than that where he leaves for just a small period of time and has to come back to Tatooine. There's all sorts of different things you could do. So it is strange. I'm wondering if they are just going to take what they have done so far for maybe the Obi-Wan film and figure out a good place to put Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan in a different story. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's a good, interesting idea. The thing is, the Rian Johnson trilogy is separate from everything, and then who knows what the Game of Thrones things is. I don't think any of that will play a factor into Obi-Wan. I would love to see Ewan McGregor come back. For me, a Han Solo film intrigued me more than an Obi-Wan film because I am perfectly fine with picturing Obi-Wan in front of a fire for 30 years.
For 30, I think it was 19 years.
19 years, just like poking the stick. Like, I'm okay with that because...
And then it gets up and whoops Darth Maul real quick.
Yeah, whoops him and then sits back down and is like, you have to come with me to Alderaan. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm fine with this. I'd be okay with that. Han Solo, I think the thing with Han Solo is you could just do whatever with him.
Yeah.
For like 30 years, right? You can do whatever. Whereas Obi-Wan, you kind of have to be a little bit careful. But I would still totally go see the movie and be super excited for that movie. Do not get me wrong when I say that. I just, right now, with all these announcements, as you look at, because they've never officially announced the Obi-Wan movie, they could easily just shelve it and be like, no, we're never doing that. It was a rumor. They could get away with that easily. But
they definitely could, yeah.
Yeah, and I'll talk about this with Brock. I don't know if we did last week. We'll do it in a little bit. But the fan service is important.
Yeah.
I think it is important, and I think they know that. As much as you can hate Kathleen Kennedy and Lucasfilm and all of them, I think they understand that fan service is important, and I think that's why we're getting the Han Solo movie 5 months after The Last Jedi.
Mm.
And I think they knew that from the get-go. They're like, this is going to ruffle some feathers. Let's remind people why they like Star Wars, and and I think it's okay for them to take a chance on a film like they did with The Last Jedi. And if you don't like what they did, that's also okay. But I wouldn't give up on the franchise just yet.
Yeah.
Based on one movie. If you don't like The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, whatever. But like, why give up on everything now? Like, all this new information is exciting. Obi Wan Kenobi, I'm gonna say it's gonna happen still. Is what I'm gonna say. That this movie's gonna happen. It's gonna come out. I don't know if it's gonna be the 2020 movie though.
Yeah, I want it to happen. You know what I mean? Like, I really do want it to happen. It is interesting. I mean, I don't know, man. I'm pretty much full Brock on this. Like, I just, I think I can see a lot of scenarios in which they sort of drop it. I mean, the vibe I'm kind of getting is they're probably gonna put Old Republic movies out with Dan and Dave, sort of fill out the ancient Jedi stuff, do really, really interesting stories within Star Wars. And then I think that Ryan's stuff is going to go out into the unknown regions a bit and sort of play around in the unknown regions, right? And so it could be a scenario where you're doing that for a while and then you come back to the saga films. I don't care until I get told specifically by Lucasfilm, we're done with Skywalker saga films. Until that comes out of someone's mouth that's official, I'm not going to believe it. So I think they might sort of bide time, sort of go into interesting places. Ryan's stuff could be very, very cool in the unknown regions and perhaps set up some villains that will resurface for the new saga films. I don't know, but there's a place for the Obi-Wan film, but it does sort of seem like they're getting away from the Star Wars story idea in general.
Let's go into that, where this kind of comes from. Do you think they'll do away with that? Or do you think it's important to have the Star Wars stories? They just give us little tidbits of things that happen while all the other crap is going on. Be like, oh yeah, just so you know, this is how they got the plans for the Death Star. And this is what Han Solo did before you met him in A New Hope. And this is what character X did. Do you think like that it could be the fan service, right? Is that the fan service that we need, that we want?
Okay, so there's a couple of different things operating here. I think first of all, Disney is realizing that trying to stick to a specific type of title for their anthology films is a mistake. And this is, I mean, their most important thing is to, like, they've changed the name of the solo Star Wars film for different countries. They literally changed it. So it's not even Solo a Star Wars story anymore, like completely in totality. So I think what they have realized is, although it's kind of a cool idea to like come up with a label and try to do that that's not really important, and it's not really like indicative of what makes these movies successful. I think all you need is a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. You have the Lucasfilm come in a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, and then just go. And if it's Star Wars, it's going to be Star Wars. And so I think that they can abandon that idea as far as like from a branding perspective. However, I don't think it's necessarily a great idea for them to abandon the idea of what the anthology films are. These are films that are like, I love Rogue One. I think it's so cool. And the way that it ties into A New Hope is particularly awesome. So I think there's room to do different stories like that. Like a lot of people, I've heard this over and over again in the fandom. People are clamoring for a young Luke Skywalker film, maybe right after Return of the Jedi with Sebastian, what's his name? Sebastian Stan. And although that's great, like I'm not necessarily clamoring for like a movie like that, but that doesn't mean you can't do something with familiar characters around a familiar time. Like I'm very much interested in like what happened right after the Battle of Endor within the Empire, like the remnants and the way that they were all sort of biting for power and trying to figure that out, or like do a movie version of the Tarkin novel, which is an incredible story. Like Tarkin's story, his upbringing, his culture, everything is very interesting. So I think there's room to do that. I guess what it really becomes is what are they going to devote the film-like resources towards, and what are they going to do big novels or shows for, right? Because like unlike something like Game of Thrones, unlike a lot of these other like properties, they have like the way they've set up canon is they can put out a novel and it can be just as significant as a film if they tighten up their canon. So I don't know, man. I'd love to get the Obi-Wan film. It would be pretty cool. I mean, I'm sure they have some stuff kind of produced for it, and yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I guess time will tell on Obi-Wan and Boba Fett and Jango Fett and Kit Fisto. The Kit Fisto movie is the one that I'm looking forward to the most. I'm sure that
if it's all underwater or majority underwater,
can you imagine?
Hell yes.
Hey, what do you think the odds? Dryden Voss, Paul Bettany's character in the Han Solo movie. Do you think he is related to Quinlan Voss at all?
That would be pretty cool. I don't see why not. That could be a sweet setup. I like Quinlan Voss a lot. It sucks because I play that Star Wars Destiny game, and I think he's so cool of a character, but he's actually pretty terrible. So because I'm a fanboy, I play him all the time and get whooped. But yeah, I like Quinlan Voss a lot. So
that's awesome. All right, let's wrap things up on the Friday edition of Flying Casual. People want to get their weekend going. Hanging out here. Josh, you could be found at the Den of Nerds YouTube channel. Check them out at the Den of Nerds. I don't need you to tell people that. They know that. But Sunday, what time can they watch the Star Wars stuff?
Damn good question, James. Came up with the name of the show today. Let's come up with the time. I'm thinking 8 p.m. Guys, let me know in the comment section. I'll be around the corners checking out the comments for this video. So what do you think? 8 o'clock, guys? I'm making Sunday Star Wars Day on the Den of Nerds. So we'll do Nerds Talk Star Wars every Sunday night at 8 o'clock, maybe. Let me know.
Sounds like a good time to me, and you can always find me here at the Rebel Scum podcast channel. I also have a new channel. It's a movie channel. It's called Digital Charcuterie on here. On Thursdays, I talk about Ninja Turtles.
Yeah, and he drops scoops. He's really quick at that. So I would suggest subscribing that. Shut up. I'm plugging your show. I would suggest subscribing and enabling notification for James' new channel. Helps the algorithm. If you guys get over there and watch his stuff early, boom, 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 it'll grow. Yeah,
earlier today was Flying Casual. No, sorry. Casual Friday on it. Everything's casual today. It's Casual Friday. I talk about the Super Mario Brother movie that's coming out on Illumination. Riverdale, the TV show, probably the greatest TV show ever made. And Deadpool versus Han Solo at the box office.
Oh my God. It's going to be such a crazy month, man.
I know. And I said in that video, spoiler alert for those that aren't going to watch it, I said, what a time. Like, if you're angry that there's two movies coming out back to back, that's a problem. Like, I can understand if you can't afford to see them both, pick one. But you're going to see
Movie
them both
Pass.
eventually.
Get Movie Pass. Or get, what was the other movie? There's a different Movie Pass one.
Canadians don't have that option.
Oh, God, Canada. Like, you do so much right, and then you just drop the ball on a few things here or there, like the shipping costs.
I know.
But yeah.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thanks so much. And that's the end of it. Please like and subscribe to this video. And yeah, may the force of others be with you.
8 out of 10 times. Keep it going.
Hey scumbags, thanks for watching. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up on our video. As always, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Rebel Scum Podcast, for all the latest videos.